there's a clip. So the context of this is a prominent American Israel lobby professor who was at a conference that I think it was like about the Holocaust or something, but for some reason at this conference that was ostensibly about the Holocaust, they started talking about Israel and like strategies with which they can defend Israel. And this professor, who is a very noted neocon, by the way, in the US, and who also a massive, very prominent member of the Israel lobby, she said this about like trying to adjust pro-Israel rhetoric with the times to make sure that you know, like they stay up to date. And this is where things like rainbow washing, greenwashing comes in. Like, it's not that Israel actually gives a shit about gay rights or anything. It's that they see these subjects as a great way to divert from the real essence of the problem, which is, what is Israel? How did Israel come into being? Essentially a state vehicle for the oppression of Palestinians for the benefit of Israeli Jews.
And you will say, what? You want us to make you look good? That's not my job. Your job is to make us look good. Our job is not to make you look good, American Jews. What do you have to worry about? Your job is to make us look good. And here's how you do it. Every one of us has to serve 3 years in the Army, 2 years in the Army, some of us 5 years, and then for the rest of our lives, you have got to serve 2 or 3 years in the army of words. You've got to learn to fight the political battle, which is even more important at this point than the military battle that we are. We'll fight the military battle. We're not asking you necessarily to come and be lone soldiers, although some of you can. You've got to learn how to fight back on the campuses, how to make the arguments. Now, they keep shifting, you know.
And this is the most relevant part.
The ground keeps shifting under us. They keep changing the language. Intersectionality wasn't even a word 10 years ago. Now suddenly it's intersectionality. You've got to stay on top of it. And you know how we train for the army? We don't train for defensive warfare. If the war against Israel ever had to be fought on Israeli soil, do I have to tell you? It's an impossibility. So it's the same thing. Don't let the war of words ever be fought about Israel's nature. Let it be fought about why you can't accept Israel, why you have to single out this tiny people. Try to find Israel on the map. It's hardly there. You know, we used to play this game, Where's Waldo? Where is Waldo on the map? Are you going to really tell me that this is the country you want to blame? Teach them how to defend by attacking. Teach them really what one says as in fencing. You've got to do that. You've got to make demands on them. They've got to serve for 3 years in the army of words.
You see what they say, right? Like, never let the conversation be about Israel's nature, because they know that they would lose on those grounds. They know that if we get to the nitty-gritty of it, the fact that Israel is a settler colonial project, history doesn't make them look good, even despite the fact that Israel is very much in control of the historical narrative, due to it being the source of lots of historical documents, it keeping certain historical documents out of the public sphere, and it essentially having most of the Western imperialist powers and their academies on its side. It's still so bad for Israel that people like this, who are big parts of the Israel lobby, need to specifically tell people, you know, you're fighting the wrong battles if you're talking about Israel's nature. You know, you need to essentially just divert from everything. Just divert and talk about everything except that. So, be like, why are you talking about Israel when Saudi Arabia is also bad? But Palestinians are homophobic. Stuff like that. Because if you keep it to the topic of what it is, which is a problem of one group of people materially oppressing another group of people for their own benefit, dispossessing that group of people for their own benefit, genociding that group of people for their own benefit, they will lose every time. They know that, and more people who are at least think that they are pro-Palestine need to realize it too. This is not an issue of LGBT phobia or social progressiveness or Israel being big or small or anything like that. It's a very simple issue of material injustice that has been consciously inflicted on Palestinians by Israelis. And they don't want you to talk about that. They want to divert you away from that as much as possible. And it's absurd too. She's a professor of Yiddish literature. She's not even like in a field that is even remotely relevant to Israel-Palestine at all, aside from like the cultural side, like the Jewish cultural side of things. And here she is like advocating for settler colonialism at like a conference of the Jewish Agency for Israel. Yeah, Yiddish was made illegal by, like for 20 years, Yiddish was illegal in Israel. You couldn't publish anything in Yiddish. They tried to suppress the language to force people to take up modern Hebrew.